Welcome back to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. Today we're joined by Bryan Housand, minor league medical coordinator for the Minnesota Twins. On today's show, we'll talk with Bryan about his journey through professional baseball athletic training, his role as the minor league medical coordinator for the Twins, what his day-to-day really looks like, and how communication between medical and performance staffs continue to evolve, and much more. Enjoy the show. All right, Bryan, welcome to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. Excited to have you on today to talk all things athletic training and your career and your current work with the Minnesota Twins. To get started today, we'll get into your Director of Minor League Medical Services role that you're in now, but to get started, share a little background of where you're from and how'd you break into athletic training? What got you interested in the profession?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on here, Sam. From a little town outside of Wilmington, North Carolina, Leland, North Carolina. Probably like everybody else in baseball, injuries got me starting to talk to local trainers in the area at UNC Wilmington, and was actually able to hear what he did day to day and to work with athletics and everything, and thought that sounded pretty cool. With my knowledge of baseball, wanting to play all the time, following the Braves a lot. I knew we had a local guy that was in the big leagues that followed along with a lot of the family members or friends of the family knew about, and that was Jeff Porter. So followed his career a little bit, and then as I got into athletic training out of college, I actually went to a conference that Tommy Craig talked at in Wilmington as well, and I was able to see that Toronto World Series ring he was wearing. It's like, man, that's pretty nice. And it's like, well, it sounds like a great career. So when I started working in high schools, it got to a point where they wanted me to teach some elementary PE classes as well. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm too much of a PE teacher, but I figured that was a time to put my love in baseball into play and started sending out applications and got into baseball that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to talk a bit about Jeff Porter and he's had an impact on so many people in PBATs, myself, and so many people in athletic training, legendary career with the Atlanta Braves. Was he kind of your main mentor when you were trying to kind of figure out how this crazy game works and you jump into it? And what kind of impact did he have on your career?
Well, honestly, I didn't really get to talk to Jeff too much.
Okay.
But definitely somebody I follow along with.
Yeah.
I did have a lot of interactions with Tommy. Tommy was actually in the same league I was in when I started out in the New York Penn League. That's back when he went back down and was helping out the young kids.
Yeah.
And then sort of a funny story was actually the current head trainer at the Braves, George. When I was working summer camps at UNC Wilmington, George was in, I believe, AA with San Diego and Memphis.
Okay.
And they were playing at UNC Wilmington, who was first, second year in the AA league at that time, and didn't have the nicest facilities for an away baseball team. And he asked to use the university's facilities, and I was in charge of opening them up at the time. And I had to open it up, and then George conned me into getting some free workout of me for a couple hours that day, and taught a little bit of baseball. And that was really why I say, hey, this is pretty cool. I like this. This is what I'm gonna pursue.
Yeah, it's funny how all these connections come back to the early days for so many of you within PBATs. Well, Bryan, when you were kind of early in your career, learning about athletic training, learning your skills, developing as a professional, did you always know it was baseball? Did you think, I want to work in the big leagues, want to work in professional baseball? And then also, how did you break in terms of back then was a little different than now? Was there an internship? Was there something that, got you started in professional baseball?
Well, honestly, when I started out in the high schools, I think having to change the seasons was really refreshing. Going
Right.
football, basketball, baseball, didn't feel like it got burned out. And I can't honestly say that if it wasn't towards the change of going to be a PE teacher, I would have looked to see something else. But as far as sports, baseball's always been my background. Baseball's always been my passion.
Yeah.
And I would say I tended to go more towards the baseball, softball, things like that during school season. So I think when I made a transition to professional sports, it was baseball was it. It wasn't anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And Yeah, and then breaking into the game is something that a lot of, I mean, you do a lot of hiring. You work all across the minor leagues. Breaking into baseball, it can be tough. PBATS does an awesome job with their internship program to give people opportunities. What was your story like in terms of that first job breaking into professional baseball?
So yeah, there wasn't an internship for me back then.
Right.
So it was sort of the old send your resume out to
Yeah.
all the coordinators you could find the information for, and that's what I did, and came down to where I had two job offers at the time with lower levels, and that was with Pittsburgh and with I think it was Atlanta. It was Atlanta, Pittsburgh and Atlanta, and it came down to full-time work versus part-time work and benefits and everything like that. So in 2001, I decided to get out of high school and joined the Pirates at New York Penn League level.
Yeah, that's awesome. And ultimately making your way up to the head athletic trainer role with the Big League Cup for the Pirates. Talk about kind of that experience and what it meant to you and development in terms of your career, starting where you did and making it all the way to that mountaintop.
I think it's almost nowadays untraditional way, just
Yeah.
because guys switching organizations and going different things. I was really lucky when I got hired. I obviously had Kent Biggerstaff there, Hall of Famer,
Yeah.
which was good to work with a couple of years. And then when Biggie left and Brad Henderson came in, I couldn't ask for a better, as you say, a mentor, role model, things that he would do, examining his shoulder and getting in and the prehab and a lot of things that way. So having Brad and then eventually the TT and then getting named
Yeah.
myself. So I had some pretty good mentors along the way, and then all the other trainers I worked with, Jose Menestral, who's probably my first rehab coordinator as I started,
Okay.
and
Cool.
obviously the career he's had up in Toronto now, and then long time with Carl Randolph there, who was the coordinator when I
Yeah.
started, and so having mentors and role models are great. I had, you know, say Mike Sandoval, Doomer. I think he was at least 16 years in the organization when he finally got the call up to the big leagues for the first time. So I saw sticking with an organization can help out. But just sort of my work ethic, I thought that staying with somebody that took a chance on you, taking the low or short season, the A balls, the double A's and triple A's, it just seemed like a natural progression. And I really can't complain about that. It was great
Yeah.
to finally get the break to be in the big leagues, and I think it's everybody's dreams to get there. And I think just the ultimate of finally getting there
Yeah.
was a big deal for me. Just the history in the city.
Hmm.
First got to start spending time with the big leagues when I got into AAA, and then as a coordinator and moving on up. That's really when the Pirates had turned the corner and started playing winning baseball, and
Yeah.
see the wild card in 13, and being the experience of being up there with them when they're in the playoffs and all that. So that was uh, what dreams are made of. I
Right.
think probably one of the biggest things in my career was getting introduced on the field during those times, and having your parents in the stands and them hearing your name and all that, and say, hey, look, the little kid, the kid from the small town, it made it out here on the big stage.
Yeah.
So I think that was special, knowing that the players that were on the roster probably had a hand in me getting picked up in the big leagues
Hmm.
with working with them, and knowing that those first rosters, even though we had some trades that happened right when I got up there, but knowing that first roster was mainly guys I grew up with coming up through the minor league, so it was all a special occasion for me.
Yeah, that's got to be really cool in terms of knowing the players who you're kind of coming up with them as you move up levels, they're moving up levels, and ultimately getting to the big leagues together must have been super, super special for you. And I don't think, like you mentioned earlier, not as common now to be with an organization for that long, which is, a testament to loyalty and kind of how things used to work, which is really cool. Brian, now all that has kind of led you to your role with the Minnesota Twins, which I want to get into a little bit. You guys have a great staff there at the big league level with Nick Paparesta in the group, and also in the minor leagues. So your role is the director of minor league medical services, overseeing care across the entire minor league system, and obviously communicating up to the group in Minnesota. Talk about the day to day. I don't think a lot of people understand. Probably number one, how much your phone's ringing, how much communication there is on your behalf, and you kind of go up and down in so many different areas across the organization. So what is like a day to day for you now that the season's underway?
Well, I think it's where I start my day at physically to start with. So obviously, based out of Fort Myers here at our spring training complex.
Uh-huh.
If I am spending a day where I really want to be around the complex league team, then I'll be in here at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, helping them out and seeing how things are going, supervising some of the meetings and the day to day work with them. And then, as the day progresses, luckily we don't get charged by the text message because I probably get 200, 250 a day with different messages going on. Trainers checking in at a different levels of what's going on or potential changes for the day or,
Mm,
reporting with different things. And then, the day just keeps on going until the last game's over with at 11 o'clock at night where, that's the time to go to bed then. And,
yeah.
so it's more of if I am and with the complex team, I'll be in here earlier, take off a little bit, and then watch the games at night. Versus if it's more of I'm going to an affiliate, stay up or come in a little bit later and spend the day with them. So it's almost like
Yeah.
the tale of two cities.
Yeah. And talk about that travel aspect. So, you've had experience in the big leagues traveling everywhere. You're used to it. But for the people out there who aren't in professional baseball athletic training might not understand. How often are you visiting an affiliate? And when you get there, what's kind of is kind of like mentorship, trying to help the younger athletic trainers understand what you might do in certain situations, or analyzing, what's going on there, and what is that process like for the travel to affiliates for you?
Well, I think throughout the year, the goal is to get to everybody at least four, if not five times,
Okay.
to be a face there. And that's an interesting question. What do you do when you get there? I think part of the trickiness of this job is when do you jump in, when do you not jump in?
Right.
I think the best way to learn sometimes is to experience and make the small mistakes yourself,
Mhm.
and learn from those. And I think part of my job is making sure we don't make those small mistakes, or being able to jump in when it's heading the wrong way, or is this something we can let them experience a little bit and then rehash afterwards? Okay, can we have done this a different way?
Mhm.
So I think that's the tricky thing to weave in and out of is when to jump in and when not to. I think I'm a little more hands-on when I'm there to work on some things versus when I'm not there, obviously, or during a spring training situation where there's so many people involved.
Yeah.
But it's a little easier being there, being hands-on, talk through situations. And even when I'm not there, we do have sort of an email chain back and forth or a WhatsApp chain back and forth where we talk through maintenance exercises or treatments for the
Mhm.
day. So it's a continuous conversation. It's not always, hey, you don't hear from me until I get there. It's very much a learning experience and trying to make them make some decisions too and better themselves.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, which is very unique. Like you're in charge, you're essentially managing these affiliates. You can probably see things a little bit before they happen at certain places, and whether it's through rehab or issues going on at different clubs. How do you kind of, like you mentioned, you want to be hands-on? How do you also work toward letting those really young athletic trainers just battle through the fire and experience that and kind of sit back? Is it difficult for you to kind of not be so hands-on when you're trying to be a mentor to these younger athletic trainers?
Well, I think the ultimate goal is you want everybody to succeed, and
Right.
that is the ultimate thing. And I think it's the amount of being involved is one is the situation something that if it goes wrong, it's a minor thing and it's not really going to affect an outcome.
Sure.
Or is if it's going south, this is really going to affect the player. It's going to affect him days off or days missed or days hurt and things like that. So if I see it trending that way, then it's an immediate jump in. If it's
Gotcha.
something that's not going to really affect the day to day, but it's something we could talk about, it might let that ride a little bit longer. So
Mhm.
just learning more and more, and I think that's a learning experience every year on when to jump in and when not to. So it's always going to be learning on myself.
Yeah.
So I think we'll continue to improve at that, but that's sort of the way we go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Having that good balance to you can't hold hands the entire time. You gotta let people go out and do their thing. Well, Brian, I know like the younger athletic trainers have changed a lot. Education is different. Technology, innovation, AI, everything's it's a crazy time for any profession. Have you noticed kind of a different level of education or talent or ability or maybe less of that, but have you noticed a difference in like what you were like at an affiliate level early on versus what maybe how polished some of these younger people are that you're working with now?
So it's funny, we were actually talking about this yesterday and give one of my complex league trainers a shout out, Stevie. She was actually calling me an old guy. She goes, "You're probably the last one to come through the internship programs of athletic training," which at North Carolina, I was the last one to be an intern with the
Yeah.
1,500 hours.
Uh,
I think without a question, today's athletic trainers probably book smarts and everything is above what we were back in the day.
yeah.
I think the old school athletic training degrees where you had to have 1,500 hours internships, a little less hand holding, was probably a little more ready to work bouncing straight out.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good blend that way.
Hmm.
I think the job has changed a lot. You know,
Right.
being back when I started, as probably a lot of guys my age, where we were, you were the strength coach, you were the travel secretary, you did laundry
Yeah.
on the road, you did
Getting
phone
food.
books,
Yeah.
yeah, you did all that stuff, and uh, thank God the profession's changed enough now to where they're getting more help
Mhm.
and things doing it, and a lot of organizations having two athletic trainers at the level versus one. Um, it was just you just put your head down and you did it, and you didn't realize how much you were doing until some of these things are getting divided out now. And you're like, oh, look at all these people that are doing what I had to do back then.
Right. Right.
So I think just the job itself has changed that way. Um, as far as the game and the analytics and the usage and everything, we didn't have as many objective numbers back then. But
Uh-huh.
we did try to figure out, different ways to monitor whether or not a player was redlining or needed
Uh-huh.
a day break. And, pitching, they always tinkered with grips and trying to improve pitches, and we just didn't have the objective numbers or the stats or the plots and things like that to
Yeah.
see if everything is working. So I think the game is the same, but the amount of information that we can get or the amount of information we have to help make decisions has definitely increased and made life a little bit easier to help make some decisions.
Yeah, that's a great point and kind of where I want to go with this next question. Um, Similar to those younger athletic trainers just being more educated, not saying smarter, but just more access to information at a younger age. You guys have access to so much data and information now, so much research and um, analytical tools that you can use. How do you guys with the Twins or across baseball kind of manage that old school mindset of like the feel for what's going on, talking to the player, watching, observing versus going strictly by the numbers and that objective data? How do you kind of blend you being like maybe like an old school athletic trainer, but also like need to be in tune with what's going on data wise?
I think that's conversation. So I think it's really easy to go from let's use our eyes versus what are the numbers telling you.
Yeah.
And I think everybody's probably had enough experience now to where a player tells you they feel one way, but the number tells you they feel differently, or vice versa. So I think that's more of the experience level, more of not just believing everything traditionally when you come out and believe a number.
Hmm.
That you use a little bit more of the explanation or to talk with the player. I think making sure what we do here is trying to make sure things happen on the field versus things happen on us trying to hit an objective number.
Right.
Making sure we're introducing dosage to make sure they're ready to compete on the field, but not making sure that we're trying to reach a number on a weight room or reach a number on a rehab threshold or anything like that. Making sure that we're training for the field and then make sure that we're training to what their usage is on the field.
Right. And within that, comparing, you talk about performance on the field being the ultimate goal. You want to win. That's why we play. But at the minor league level, development is also maybe, if not more important. How do you balance, as an athletic trainer who's been in the big leagues and seen how important, like, you have to win? That's the ultimate goal there. Versus being an athletic trainer in more of a development role. Does that change how you approach the game in general?
Well, I think everybody, we want to do what's best for the player. We want to do what's
Uh-huh.
best for the organization. I think we always say around here, availability is the best ability. So
Right.
finding ways to make the guys available for today, get the 100% out of what they can do versus pushing them too hard and having to set back. But realizing at these levels the importance of having them on the field because game is what's going to develop them for the big leagues. So
Yeah.
if we can't get them on the field, we're not doing our part to help their development.
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense. And Brian, shifting gears here a bit to kind of talk about like your role in leadership and staff development down there. You oversee and work with a large group of athletic trainers, mostly or a lot starting their career. Maybe I'm sure you had an intern at spring training who was in day one of the job. Must be crazy for you to see. When you guys are hiring and looking for quality applicants and candidates for those lower levels, are there certain things you're looking for our listeners out there who are hoping to jump into baseball? Is it like a personality? Is it a resume? Is it kind of the feel when you talk to them? What's most important to you when you're looking to make those decisions?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing is confidence.
Okay.
Confidence in yourself, confidence in what you do. You don't want to have somebody that's not confident because you're like, if you get into a stress situation, are you going to be able to make the decision? But with that confidence, also somebody that we know is a teammate, somebody that's just workable because this doesn't work if you don't have great communication with your coaching staff, with your strength staff, with your nutrition, with your sports psych. If you can't play well with others and have those conversations and do what's best for the player, it unfortunately it's not going to work out that way.
Yeah,
Um, that's the player's benefits, that's your benefits, but knowing that you can work with somebody else. So that's somebody that's got a well-rounded experience. It's not just locking into um, straight baseball or they've
yeah,
done other sports, knowing how to be able to diversify your treatment styles,
sure,
not being locked in on the same thing. I think that's one of the sometimes when we interview physical therapists, at least, it's like, well, I'm this type of therapist, I'm a this type of therapist, and it's like, okay, well, let's don't put yourself in a box.
Mm,
Let's be open to other thoughts. And I think as long as you have conversations with people, you're comfortable or open to other thoughts, you're comfortable, they're able to work with others. I think that's what puts you ahead of other people in the hiring process.
right, right. And you've talked about communication, and I think a lot of your colleagues across PBATS harp on this as something that's so important. That list you just rattled off was a ton of people. So strength coaches, nutrition, team physicians, big league athletic trainers, front office, all your affiliates. There's so many people involved every day. Do you have kind of like a point person within each department, strength, nutrition, or is everything roll up to Nick in Minnesota? What's kind of that tree like of who you're talking to mostly throughout the days?
So we probably have about 175 different text threads. Just kidding. But we do have different leaderships text threads and
Okay.
things. We'll have an affiliate with stuff going on versus whenever decisions on the more of the department heads need to go on. And then Nick's a part of some of these as well, especially the guys that are closer to the big leagues or anything like that. But we do make sure he's involved in these and just so he knows what's going on in case questions are asked. But we do pretty much all of our decisions go through a lot of people at one time to
Right.
make sure everybody's on the same page.
Right, right. And kind of back toward that staff development conversation we were having a bit earlier. We often hear about work-life balance, which might not exist for you, probably hasn't for years and years. How do you guys manage like a new athletic trainer comes in, maybe they're burning out from so many hours or workload or travel, it's something that's new to them. How do you guys kind of help support the younger staff members in like their first grind through a full season in the minor leagues or something like that?
Well, I think one thing that we do here is, our young staff goes through sort of a disc assessment with our sports psych department as well.
Okay.
Give them some training on how to deal with certain situations and how to just unload on a day and relax when you're going home. So giving them different suggestions that way. knowing that, one thing that never happened when I was coming up is sort of the days off. With the
Right.
minor league system, you get at least one day off now versus a week versus, back in the day where we would go, 36, 37 games in a row and
Yeah.
things like that. But knowing there's days off now, encouraging them to get something and do something away from the field, something that's fun, something
Uh-huh.
to get your mind off of it. Very lucky with this organization. We have two full-time trainers at every level, which is, I think we're one of maybe two or three that
Yeah.
do that. So dividing up the workload, knowing it's not all coming down on you. We do have days off throughout the year as well, where they are able to pick certain times throughout the season just to get away from it a little bit. And it's more on me when I'm going in and having conversations or weekly updates or whatnot, checking in to make sure they're fine and give them strategies if they're not.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. And things have changed so much, as we mentioned a couple times. But, back in the day, there might have been big league head and assistant, and then one person at each minor league site, and there was a lot for you guys to do. I remember Ron Porterfield of the Dodgers telling me his one of his first responsibilities was making soup every day for players to eat and booking travel, and he even said he used to drive the van and the bus back in the day. So it's definitely changed as you've shared here today. But Brian, for those younger listeners out there, from your experience in doing this, but also managing a lot of these people, do you have kind of a single best piece of advice for someone that's just getting started or wants to pursue pro baseball athletic training?
I would say be true to your goals. Make sure you're getting into it the right reason. It's not jump into baseball because I want to get to the big leagues. No, jump into it because this is something you're passionate about, that you really like working it, and realize that it's still a grind. It's still a daily grind, and it's work.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as people think it is. I still think the outside world sometimes thinks baseball is, you show up to the ballpark at 5 o'clock and you play a 7 o'clock game and then you get to go home. No, sort of the old little league mindset, and realize there's a lot of hours involved. There's a lot of time away from your family. There's a lot of time away from your friends.
Mhm.
But knowing that if you're doing this for the right reason, something you're passionate about, something you love, then this is also your family as well, and it
Yeah.
can it can be a rewarding job.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. I mean, you guys, it's a profession where you're serving others. I think all of the PBATS members are such selfless individuals. I think that's kind of how you have to be if you're giving so much of your time to other people. So it's cool to hear you echo that statement as well. Well, Brian, a couple questions about kind of your career and some of your favorite things. Throughout your travels, minor league, big leagues, you've seen, I mean, I can't imagine how many stadiums you've seen. Do you have any favorite spots that you've been in the dugout looking out, watching a game that you enjoyed more than others?
Well, not trying to say how old I'm at and everything like that, but obviously, beginning of my career in the Penn League, looking out, Staten Island and seeing
Oh
the
yeah.
trees and stuff like that in the water, just going to the different historic ballparks and seeing those, going up top of Dodger Stadium, looking out and turning around and seeing the Hollywood sign. Or
Oh yeah. Yeah.
my first big league game I ever went to was at Wrigley Field, and going out to right field in the Ivy and looking to make sure Andre Dawson's not coming out of the wall from the old commercials and everything. But I think just being a baseball buff, I started my career in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, home of the Little League World Series, and
Right.
things
Right.
there. Um, just seeing all those little historic places, and it's been rewarding all throughout. Obviously, more places I want to see, and new ballparks and everything like that. So it's great to see the transition of some of these stadiums from what they were when I first started to what they are now. So it's incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've been doing it for so long and have so many cool experiences. And not to mention one of I think everybody's favorite ballpark lately is up in Pittsburgh, which awesome view with the bridges and the city back there. Well, Brian, this has been great talking to you. Always appreciate everything you do for PBATS and for the professional athletic training. You've been nothing but a amazing resource for the group, and we truly appreciate everything you've done. And wish you and everyone down there in Florida and across the Twins organization best of luck the rest of this season.
I appreciate it, Sam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Inside Athletic Training Podcast. For more information about PBATS and athletic training, visit pbats.com. See you next time.